The entire airport terminal fell silent. Ella Torres stood frozen at Gate 12 of Cleveland Hopkins International Airport, her wrinkled hands trembling as she held her first-class boarding pass. Tears gathered in her 72-year-old eyes, threatening to spill down her brown cheeks. Around her, at least 50 passengers had stopped what they were doing. Some held their phones up, recording. Others whispered to each other, their faces twisted in shock and discomfort. I said, "You need to move to the back of the line," Harper James repeated, her voice sharp and cold. The flight attendant's blonde hair was pulled back, so tightly it seemed to stretch her face. Her blue uniform was perfect, not a single wrinkle anywhere. She stood with her hands on her hips, blocking Ella from entering the jet bridge that led to the airplane. First class is for our premium passengers only. Ella's voice shook as she spoke. But I have a first-class ticket. Look, it says right here, I don't care what that piece of paper says, Harper interrupted, snatching the boarding pass from Ella's hand. She barely glanced at it before shoving it back. There must be some mistake. You probably got confused at the check-in counter. Economy boarding is over there. She pointed a perfectly manicured finger toward the crowded general boarding line. A young man in a business suit stepped forward. "Excuse me, but I saw her ticket. It clearly says first class, seat 2A. Harper whirled around to face him, her eyes flashing with anger. "Sir, I'm going to need you to mind your own business. I am the senior flight attendant on this aircraft, and I know who belongs in first class and who doesn't." The man's face turned red, but he stepped back, muttering under his breath. Ella felt her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. Her hands shook worse now, and she had to grip her small brown purse tighter to stop them. She had lived 72 years on this earth. She had survived things Harper James couldn't imagine. But standing here, being treated like she was nobody, like she didn't matter, like she was less than human, it cut deeper than any wound she'd ever known. "Please," Ella said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just want to go home. I've been visiting my daughter. She just had surgery. I'm very tired. My ticket is real. I paid for first class because my back hurts and I need the extra room." Harper's lip curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Sure you did. Look, lady, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but it's not going to work on me. Now, either you get in the correct line, or I'm calling security to remove you from this gate entirely." "This is wrong," a woman shouted from the crowd. She had a baby on her hip and looked furious. "She has a ticket. Let her on the plane." Other voices joined in. "Yeah, this isn't right. Let her board." "What's wrong with you?" Harper's face flushed pink, but her expression only grew harder. She pulled out her radio. "Security to Gate 12. Security to Gate 12. We have a situation." Ella felt the world spinning around her. This couldn't be happening. Not in 2025. Not after everything. She thought about her daughter, Sarah, back in Columbus, still recovering from her surgery. She thought about her 3 grandchildren who were waiting for her to come home. She thought about the business she'd built from nothing, the empire she created with her own 2 hands over 50 years. But right now, in this moment, none of that mattered, because Harper James looked at her and saw only one thing, the color of her skin. 2 security guards appeared, both large men in dark uniforms. "What seems to be the problem?" the taller one asked. Harper spoke before Ella could say a word. "This woman is trying to board first class with what I believe is a fake ticket. She's refusing to move to the correct boarding area and is causing a disturbance." "That's not true," several passengers yelled at once. The security guard looked uncomfortable. He glanced at Ella's boarding pass, then at Harper, then back at Ella. "Ma'am," he said to Ella, his voice gentler than Harper's, "can I see your ID and boarding pass?" With shaking hands, Ella fumbled in her purse. She pulled out her driver's license and handed it over along with her boarding pass. The security guard examined them carefully. "These look legitimate to me," he said slowly. "The name matches. The seat assignment is 2A, which is definitely first class. I don't see any problem here." Harper's face went from pink to red. "That's impossible. Run it through the system again. There has to be an error." Ma'am, the security guard said, turn to Harper now. There's no error. This passenger has a valid first-class ticket. She has every right to board. I am telling you, Harper hissed, that there is something wrong. I know my passengers, and she doesn't belong in first class. She probably bought that ticket with a stolen credit card or something. The crowd gasped. Several people started shouting at once. The second security guard stepped between Harper and the growing mob of angry passengers. Ella felt something break inside her chest. After all these years, after everything she'd accomplished, after every battle she'd fought, every mountain she climbed, every door she'd knocked down, here she stood, being accused of being a thief, being treated like a criminal, all because of her skin. A tear finally escaped and rolled down her cheek. I want her removed, Harper said firmly, crossing her arms. I don't care what that ticket says. I'm not comfortable having her in first class with our valued customers. That's enough. The voice boomed across the gate area like thunder. Everyone turned. A man in a pilot's uniform came striding toward them, his face dark with fury. His name tag read Captain Rodriguez. He looked at Harper with an expression that could have melted steel. What exactly is going on here, Ms. James? His voice was quiet now, but somehow that made it more terrifying. Harper straightened her spine, but Ella noticed her confidence wavering just a tiny bit. Captain, I was just doing my job. This woman's ticket seems suspicious, and her ticket seems suspicious? Captain Rodriguez interrupted. Or she seems suspicious to you? Harper's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating a fact. You just racially profiled a passenger in front of hundreds of witnesses. He held up his phone. It's already on social media. There are at least 20 videos of what just happened here. The blood drained from Harper's face. I was just following protocol. Protocol for what? Harassing elderly passengers? Accusing them of crimes based on nothing. Captain Rodriguez shook his head. Ms. Torres, I apologize on behalf of everyone at this airline. Please, let me escort you to your seat personally. But Ella didn't move. She couldn't. Her legs felt like they were made of stone. She looked at Harper James, really looked at her, and saw something she recognized. Fear. Harper was afraid now, but not afraid enough. Not yet. I want to speak to the airline president, Ella said quietly. Her voice didn't shake anymore. Something had shifted inside her, like a door closing on her sadness, and another door opening on something else. Something harder, stronger. I want to speak to whoever owns this airline. Harper actually laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Good luck with that. You'll be lucky if anyone even returns your call. Captain Rodriguez looked pained. Ma'am, I promise you, I will personally file a report about this incident. Harper will face consequences. Will she? Ella asked. She looked around at all the faces staring at her. Some sympathetic, some shocked, some looking away because they were embarrassed. Or will this just disappear like it never happened? Will she get a little slap on the wrist and then keep her job? Keep treating people like me this way? No one answered. Ella took a deep breath. Her hands had stopped shaking. I'll get on the plane. I'll go to my seat. But this isn't over. Captain Rodriguez nodded. I understand. And I promise you, the airline will take this seriously. Ella wanted to believe him, but she'd heard promises before. As she walked down the jet bridge toward the plane, she could feel everyone's eyes on her back. She heard Harper's voice, quieter now but still defiant, talking to the security guards. I was just doing my job. How was I supposed to know? She didn't look like she belonged in first class. Ella stopped walking. Those words echoed in her head. She didn't look like she belonged. Slowly, Ella turned around. She walked back to where Harper stood. The flight attendant's eyes went wide, and she actually took a step backward. What's your employee number? Ella asked calmly. Harper blinked. What? Your employee number. What is it? I don't have to tell you that. Captain Rodriguez cleared his throat. Actually, you do. It's on your name tag. Employee 47 to 8,392. Ella pulled out her phone and typed something. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. No trembling now. She was done being the victim of this story. Thank you, Captain. I'll remember that number. Are you threatening me? Harper's voice went high and sharp. You can't do anything to me. I'm protected by the union. I've been with this airline for 12 years. Ella didn't respond. She just turned and walked onto the plane. The first-class cabin was beautiful. Cream-colored leather seats, soft lighting, plenty of space. Ella found her seat, 2A, right by the window. She sat down carefully, her back aching like it always did after standing too long. She closed her eyes and tried to breathe. Other passengers began boarding. Many of them looked at her, some with pity, some with kindness, and some with curiosity. A few stopped to say they were sorry about what happened. Ella thanked them quietly. Harper James appeared in the first-class cabin, her face a mask of cold professionalism. She avoided looking at Ella entirely as she helped other passengers with their luggage and got them settled. The plane filled up. The engine started. They pulled away from the gate. Ella stared out the window at the Ohio sky, gray and heavy with clouds. She thought about her life, about the little girl she'd been, growing up in poverty in a tiny town in southern Ohio, about how she'd worked 3 jobs to put herself through business school, about the first company she'd started in her garage, sewing clothes by hand and selling them at local markets, about how that little garage business had grown and grown and grown, about the choices she'd made, the risks she'd taken, the people who'd told her she'd never succeed, about the airline she bought 15 years ago when it was failing, when everyone said she was crazy to invest in it, about the name on all the legal documents, the name that owned 51% of the company's shares. Ella Torres. Harper's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. This is Flight 447 to Columbus. Our flight time today will be approximately 35 minutes. Ella pulled out her phone. She opened her email and started typing. The email went to David Mitchell, the CEO she'd hired to run the airline's day-to-day operations, the man she'd personally chosen because he shared her values. Or so she'd thought. The subject line read, urgent, incident report and required immediate action. Her fingers flew across the screen as she detailed everything that had happened, every word Harper had said, every moment of humiliation, every second of that public shame. At the end of the email, she wrote, I will be at headquarters first thing tomorrow morning. We need to talk about our hiring practices, our training programs, and our company culture. Clearly, something is very, very wrong. She hit send. The plane climbed into the sky. Ella looked out at the clouds and felt something she hadn't expected to feel. Power. She'd almost forgotten she had it. Tomorrow, Harper James was going to learn exactly who Ella Torres was. Tomorrow, a lot of people were going to learn. Tomorrow, things are going to change. But Harper didn't know that yet. Right now, at this very moment, Harper James was walking to the first-class cabin with a tray of drinks, that same cold, professional smile on her face. She approached Ella's row. Beverage? Harper asked, her voice dripping with fake politeness. She still wouldn't make eye contact. Ella looked up at her, really looked at her. She saw a woman who thought she'd won. A woman who thought she'd put someone in their place and gotten away with it. A woman who had no idea that her entire world was about to turn upside down. Water, please, Ella said softly. Just water. Harper handed her a cup with a plastic smile and moved on. Ella took a sip and felt the cool liquid ease her dry throat. She looked out the window again. The plane punched through the gray clouds, and suddenly everything was bright. The sun blazed above the clouds, turning everything golden and beautiful. Ella smiled. Tomorrow was going to be very interesting, but she had no idea just how interesting it was about to become, or that the choice she was about to make would set off a chain of events that would change not just Harper's life, but the lives of thousands of people. Because when Ella Torres walked into that headquarters building the next morning, she was going to discover something that would shake her to her core, something that would make her question everything she thought she knew about the company she owned, something that would force her to make an impossible choice. But that was tomorrow. For now, She sipped her water and watched Ohio disappear behind her, the state growing smaller and smaller below. And in the galley at the back of first class, Harper James laughed with another flight attendant. Ella didn't sleep that night. She sat in her living room in her quiet house in the suburbs of Columbus, the same house she'd lived in for 30 years. She refused to move to some fancy mansion, even after her wealth had grown beyond what she'd ever imagined. This was her home, the place where she'd raised Sarah, the place where her late husband, Marcus, had taken his last breath 5 years ago. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight, then 1 o'clock, then 2. Ella sat in Marcus's old recliner, still wearing the clothes she'd worn on the plane. She hadn't even taken off her shoes. She just stared at her phone, reading and rereading the response from David Mitchell, her CEO. His email had arrived an hour after she'd landed. It was short, too short. Mrs. Torres, I'm deeply sorry about your experience. I've launched an immediate investigation. Let's meet tomorrow at 9 a.m. There are some things we need to discuss. Some things I've been meaning to tell you. David, some things he'd been meaning to tell her? What did that mean? Ella felt a cold sensation creeping up her spine. In all her years of business, she'd learned to trust her instincts. And right now, her instincts were screaming that something was very wrong. She opened her laptop and logged into the airline's private database, the one only she and David had access to. She started searching through files, employee records, financial reports, training documents. She didn't know what she was looking for, but she knew she'd recognize it when she found it. 3 hours later, as the sun began to rise over Columbus, Ella found it. Her hands froze on the keyboard. Her breath caught in her throat. The words on the screen blurred as tears filled her eyes, but these weren't tears of sadness. These were tears of pure, burning rage. There were complaints. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all filed over the past 2 years, all describing similar incidents to what had happened to her. A Hispanic man removed from first class because the flight attendant didn't believe his ticket was real. An Asian woman told she probably didn't understand the boarding process and needed to move to economy. A black businessman accused of being aggressive when he questioned why he was being passed over for first-class boarding, while white passengers with later boarding numbers were let on first. A Muslim family asked to move to different seats because their presence made other passengers uncomfortable. On and on and on. The complaints went back 23 months, and every single one of them had been marked as resolved, no action required, or unable to verify, case closed. Ella's hand shook again, but not with fear this time. With fury, she clicked on another file. This one was labeled HR Training Updates, Confidential. Inside, she found memos from David Mitchell to the HR department. Her eyes scanned the words, and each sentence felt like a punch to her gut. Focus on efficiency over sensitivity training. Our priority is keeping flights on schedule, not lengthy discrimination workshops. If complaints can't be proven with video evidence, default to supporting our long-term employees. We can't afford the turnover. Remind staff that the customer is always right, referring to our paying passengers, not those making complaints. Ella slammed the laptop shut. She stood up so fast the recliner rocked backward. She paced across her living room, her mind racing. David Mitchell, the man she'd trusted, the man she'd hired because his resume was impressive, because he'd promised to grow the airline while maintaining its values. The man she believed in. He'd been covering this up. For almost 2 years, he'd been hiding a pattern of racism and discrimination in her airline. In her airline, the company she'd built. The company that bore her values, her legacy, her name, even if the public didn't know she owned it. Ella had always kept her ownership quiet. She was a private person. She didn't want fame or attention. She'd installed David as the public face of the company while she remained in the background, content to guide strategy and make major decisions while he handled the day-to-day operations. But he'd betrayed that trust. He'd taken her desire for privacy and used it to build a company culture that went against everything she believed in. At 6 a.m., Ella's phone rang. It was her daughter, Sarah. "Mom, are you okay? I just saw the videos. They're everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. Mom, there are millions of views. People are furious. Ella closed her eyes. Of course. She'd known the videos would spread, but she hadn't checked social media. She'd been too focused on the internal documents. I'm fine, baby. How are you feeling? How's your back? Never mind my back. Mom, they're calling for boycotts. There are hashtags trending. Hashtag Justice for Ella and hashtag Boycott the Airline. People want that flight attendant fired. They want. Mom, are you really okay? Tell me the truth. Ella sat back down. No, she said quietly. I'm not okay, but I will be. I'm going to fix this. What do you mean, fix this? I'll explain later. I need to go. I have a meeting at 9. Mom, I love you, Sarah. Kiss the grandkids for me. And rest. Don't worry about me. I've handled worse than this. She hung up before Sarah could argue. Ella went upstairs and took a long shower. She let the hot water pour over her, washing away the exhaustion, the anger, the hurt. When she stepped out, she looked at herself in the foggy mirror. Her brown skin showed every one of her 72 years. Gray hair, wrinkles around her eyes and mouth, age spots on her hands. But her eyes still burned with the same fire they'd had when she was 25 and starting her first business with $300 and a dream. She got dressed carefully. A navy blue suit, expensive but not flashy. Pearl earrings that had belonged to her mother. Comfortable shoes, because her feet still hurt from standing at that gate yesterday. She pulled her gray hair back into a neat bun. She looked in the mirror one more time. Show them who you are, she whispered to her reflection. At 8:30 a.m., Ella pulled her modest Toyota into the parking lot of Torres Aviation headquarters. It was a large, modern building on the outskirts of Columbus. She bought the land and built this place 12 years ago. She parked in a visitor spot, not in the executive parking area where her reserved spot sat empty. She walked through the front doors. The receptionist, a young woman named Kelly, looked up and smiled. Good morning. Do you have an appointment? Kelly didn't recognize her. Ella had only been to headquarters a handful of times in the past few years, and she'd never made a big deal about who she was. Yes, Ella Torres to see David Mitchell. Kelly's smile faltered. She looked at her computer screen, then back at Ella. Her eyes went wide. Oh my God, you're the woman from the videos. From yesterday. Yes. Is Mr. Mitchell available? Yes, let me. Oh my God, I'm so sorry about what happened to you. Everyone here has been talking about it. It's terrible. That flight attendant should be fired. She should be. Kelly. Ella's voice was gentle but firm. Please, just tell Mr. Mitchell I'm here. Kelly nodded quickly and picked up her phone. Mr. Mitchell, your 9 o'clock is here. Yes, sir. Right away. She hung up and pointed toward the elevators. Top floor. His secretary will meet you there. Ella rode the elevator up, her heart pounding. The doors opened, and there stood David Mitchell's secretary, Patricia, a woman in her 50s who'd been with the company for 8 years. Patricia's face went pale when she saw Ella. Mrs. Torres. We weren't expecting. We were, but... It's all right, Patricia. Is he ready? Yes, ma'am. Right this way. Patricia led her down a hallway lined with pictures of airplanes and happy passengers. Ella noticed that in all the photos, the passengers were diverse, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, all smiling together. The images felt like a cruel joke now. They reached David's office. Patricia knocked once, then opened the door. David Mitchell stood behind his desk. He was a tall man in his 50s, with silver hair and an expensive suit. He'd always looked confident, powerful, but right now he looked terrified. Mrs. Torres, he said, please sit down. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? I'm fine. Ella walked in but didn't sit. She stood in front of his desk, her hands clasped in front of her. I read the files, David. All of them. The color drained from his face. I can explain. Explain what? Explain how you've been covering up discrimination complaints for 2 years? Explain how you told HR to prioritize efficiency over treating people with dignity? Explain how you turned my company into exactly the kind of place I built it not to be? David held up his hands. Please let me speak. It's not what you think. Yes, there were complaints, but most of them were exaggerated. You have to understand, passengers today, they complain about everything. If we investigated every single complaint thoroughly, we'd never get anything done. We'd lose money. The airline would fail. So you chose profit over people. I chose survival. Mrs. Torres, with respect, you haven't been involved in the day-to-day operation for years. You don't know how competitive this industry is, how tight the margins are. We can't afford to fire experienced employees every time someone gets their feelings hurt. Ella's jaw tightened. Got their feelings hurt? David, I was publicly humiliated yesterday. I was accused of theft. I was treated like I was less than human. And you're telling me that's just hurt feelings. David ran a hand through his hair. He looked desperate now. That was different. What happened to you was wrong. Obviously wrong. And Harper James will be fired. I promise you that. But the other cases, they weren't all clear-cut. There were misunderstandings, communication issues. 23 months of misunderstandings. Yes. Sometimes, yes. Look, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But please, think about the bigger picture. If word gets out about all these complaints, the media will destroy us. The company's reputation will be ruined. We'll lose passengers. We'll lose money. People will lose their jobs. Good people, people with families to feed. Ella stared at him. So your solution is to keep hiding it? To keep letting it happen? No. My solution is to handle it quietly. We'll improve training. We'll have stricter policies. But we don't need to air all our dirty laundry in public. We don't need to. I'm taking control of the company, Ella said quietly. David stopped talking. His mouth hung open. What? I'm removing you as CEO, effective immediately. I'm taking direct control of Torres Aviation. You can't do that. David's voice rose. I have a contract. The board. I own 51% of this company. I am the board's majority voice. And your contract has a clause about ethical violations. I'd say covering up discrimination qualifies. Ella pulled a folder from her purse and placed it on his desk. These are the documents. You'll receive a full severance package. But you're done here. David's face turned red. This is insane. You're making a mistake. You're going to destroy everything I've built here. Everything you've built? Ella's voice was steel. David, I built this company. I bought it when it was drowning in debt. I invested my money, my time, my reputation. And you took it and turned it into something I don't even recognize. The company is profitable because of me. Our stock value has doubled under my leadership. And how many people did you hurt to get those profits? How many passengers were made to feel small? How many employees thought it was okay to treat people the way Harper treated me because you created a culture where that behavior was tolerated? David slumped into his chair. He looked broken. You're really doing this. I'm really doing this. Fine. His voice was bitter now. Fire me. Take over. But I'm telling you, Mrs. Torres, you have no idea what you're walking into. That video from yesterday? It's going to get worse before it gets better. The media is going to tear this company apart. Lawyers are going to come after us. We're going to be sued into oblivion. And when this company crashes and burns, don't say I didn't warn you. Ella picked up her folder. We'll see. Patricia will escort you out. You have 1 hour to collect your personal belongings. She walked to the door, then paused. And David, Harper James isn't the only person being fired today. I'm going to review every single complaint in that file. Every employee who was involved in discrimination, they're done. Every manager who covered it up, they're done. I'm burning it all down and rebuilding it the right way. She left his office and found Patricia standing in the hallway, her eyes wide. Patricia, please escort Mr. Mitchell out of the building. Then I need you to call an emergency meeting of all senior staff. Everyone in the conference room in 1 hour. Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Torres, I just want you to know, I'm glad you're here. A lot of us have been worried about some things happening. We just didn't know what to do. Ella squeezed her hand. Thank you. It's going to be okay. But as Ella walked down the hallway toward what would now be her office, she wasn't sure if that was true. She passed a window and looked out at the parking lot below. There were news vans, at least 5 of them, with satellite dishes and cameras. The media had found her. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from her lawyer. "We need to talk. Now." 3 lawsuits filed this morning. More coming. Call me. Another text, this one from Sarah. "Mom, there's a reporter at my house. They know you're my mother. They're asking questions about the airline." "What's going on?" Ella's phone started ringing. Unknown number. She didn't answer. It rang again. Another unknown number. She reached the office, her office now, and closed the door. She leaned against it and closed her eyes. David had been right about one thing. This was going to get much worse before it got better. But Ella Torres had never backed down from a fight in her life. She wasn't about to start now. She walked to the desk and sat down in the leather chair. On the wall across from her hung a picture, the first plane she'd ever bought for this airline, with her and Marcus standing in front of it, both of them grinning like kids on Christmas morning. Marcus had always believed in her, even when everyone else said she was crazy. "I'm going to fix this," she whispered to his picture. "I promise." There was a knock on the door. Patricia poked her head in. "Mrs. Torres? I hate to bother you, but there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent. She says her name is Rebecca Thompson, and she's the president of the Flight Attendants Union. She says if you don't meet with her right now, there's going to be a strike. By tomorrow morning, every flight attendant in this airline is going to walk out." Ella's blood ran cold. A strike, on top of everything else. "Send her in," Ella said quietly. Patricia nodded and disappeared. A moment later, a woman in her 40s walked in. She had short black hair, sharp features, and an expression that could cut glass. "Mrs. Torres," Rebecca said. Her voice was cold and professional. "We need to talk about Harper James, and about how you're planning to destroy the lives of dozens of my union members based on nothing but accusations." Ella stood up slowly. "Sit down, Miss Thompson." "I'll stand." "Sit down." Ella's voice left no room for argument. Rebecca hesitated. Then Saturday Ella remained standing. She placed her hands on the desk and leaned forward. "Let me make something very clear. I'm not destroying anyone's life, but I am going to hold people accountable for their actions. If your union members discriminated against passengers, they're going to face consequences. Harper James has worked for this airline for 12 years with zero complaints." Ella opened her laptop and turned it around. 3 complaints. All dropped because management decided her 12 years of service meant more than the passengers she hurt. Rebecca's jaw tightened. Those complaints were investigated and found to be without merit. They were buried. There's a difference. You can't just fire union members without cause. We have protections. We have contracts. And I have 51% ownership of this company. Ella's voice rose for the first time. "You want to strike? Go ahead. Strike. Shut down every flight. Cost me millions of dollars. But I promise you, Ms. Thompson, I will not back down. I will not let discrimination continue in my airline. Not for union contracts, not for profits, not for anything." Rebecca stood up. Her face was flushed with anger. "You just made a very big mistake, Mrs. Torres. By this time tomorrow, you'll have no flight attendants. By the end of the week, you'll have no airline." She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Ella sank into her chair. Her hands were shaking again. Her phone rang. Her lawyer. She answered. "Ella, we have a serious problem." "I know. The union is threatening to strike. That's not the only problem. CNN just broke a story. They got a hold of some of the internal complaint files. I don't know how, but they're reporting that Torres Aviation has been covering up discrimination for years. Your stock just dropped 15% in the last hour, and the FAA is calling. They want to launch an investigation into the company's practices." Ella closed her eyes. The walls were closing in. "There's more," her lawyer continued. "Harper James just hired an attorney. She's planning to sue you personally for wrongful termination and defamation. She's claiming you're only firing her because the incident went viral and that other employees who did similar things kept their jobs. But I'm firing all of them. She doesn't know that yet, and her lawyer is smart. He's already talking to the media, painting Harper as a victim, saying you're throwing her under the bus to protect the company's reputation. Ella wanted to scream, or cry, or both. "What do I do?" she asked quietly. Her lawyer was silent for a long moment. "Honestly, Ella, you might want to consider selling. Cut your losses. Get out before this destroys everything you've built. I have buyers who'd be interested. You could walk away with your wealth intact and let someone else deal with this mess." "Walk away." Ella repeated the word slowly. "You want me to walk away? I want you to protect yourself. This could get ugly. Really ugly. Personal lawsuits, federal investigations, a strike. Ella, you could lose everything. Your reputation, your money, even your health. The stress alone could." "No, Ella." I said no. I'm not walking away. I'm not selling. This is my company, and I'm going to fix it. She hung up for a long moment. She just sat there in the quiet office. Outside, she could hear phones ringing, people talking in urgent voices. The entire building was in chaos. Ella thought about Harper James at the gate yesterday. That look of contempt. That certainty that she could treat Ella like garbage and get away with it. She thought about all the other passengers in those complaint files. People who'd been hurt, humiliated, made to feel less than human. People who complained and been ignored. She thought about Marcus. About what he would tell her right now if he were here. And she knew exactly what he'd say. "Fight, Ella. You've never run from a fight in your life. Don't start now." Ella stood up. She straightened her suit jacket. She walked to a window and looked out at those news vans in the parking lot. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call. "This is Ella Torres," she said when someone answered. "I need you to set up a press conference. Today, 3 o'clock. I'm going to tell the world exactly who I am, what's been happening in my company, and what I'm going to do about it." She hung up and took a deep breath. In 6 hours, everything was going to change. But what Ella didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that at that exact moment, in a hotel room across town, Harper James was sitting with her lawyer and a man in a dark suit. And the man in the dark suit was making Harper an offer that would turn Ella's press conference into a nightmare, an offer that would expose secrets Ella didn't even know existed, an offer that would make everything so much worse than Ella could ever imagine. Harper smiled as she listened to the man's proposal. She was going to destroy Ella Torres, and she was going to do it in front of the entire world. At 2:45 p.m., Ella stood backstage in the conference room of Torres Aviation headquarters. Through a gap in the curtain, she could see the room filling up with reporters. There had to be at least 100 of them, maybe more. Cameras everywhere. Microphones set up on the podium like a forest of metal and foam. Her hands were sweating. She wiped them on her skirt for the 10th time. Patricia appeared beside her, holding a tablet. "Mrs. Torres, we're almost ready, but I need to tell you something. Harper James just arrived." Ella's head snapped up. "What?" "She's here." "Yes, ma'am. She's in the lobby with her lawyer and some other man we don't recognize. They're demanding to be let into the press conference. They say Harper has a right to defend herself publicly." Ella's mind raced. This wasn't good. Harper was planning something. But what? "Let them in," Ella said quietly. Patricia's eyes went wide. "Are you sure?" "Yes. Seat them in the front row where I can see them." "But Mrs. Torres." "Patricia, I've spent my whole life facing people who wanted to destroy me. One more won't break me. Let her in." Patricia nodded and hurried away. Ella closed her eyes and took 3 deep breaths, the way Marcus had taught her years ago when she got nervous before big presentations. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Calm, steady, strong. At 3 p.m. exactly, Patricia gave her the signal. Ella walked through the curtain and onto the small stage. The camera flashes nearly blinded her. Questions erupted from every direction, reporters shouting over each other. "Mrs. Torres, Is it true you own the airline? How long has discrimination been happening? Are you going to fire Harper James? What about the strike? Ella raised her hand, and slowly the room quieted. She looked out at all those faces. Some looked curious. Some looked skeptical. Some looked hungry, like wolves waiting to see blood. Then she saw Harper. Front row, left side, sitting between a man in an expensive suit, her lawyer, probably, and another man in a dark suit who looked oddly familiar, though Ella couldn't place him. Harper stared at Ella with a small smile on her face. It was a smile of someone who knew a secret, someone who was waiting to drop a bomb. Ella turned her attention to the microphone. "Thank you all for coming," she began. Her voice was steady, clear. "My name is Ella Torres. I am the majority owner of Torres Aviation. I've owned this airline for 15 years, but I've kept my ownership private because I value my privacy and believe in letting qualified professionals run the company while I provided guidance and oversight." She paused, letting that sink in. She could see reporters frantically typing on their laptops and phones. "Yesterday, I was publicly humiliated. I experienced something that no crimes I didn't ever have to experience, and denied service that I had paid for, all because of the color of my skin." More camera flashes. More typing. "What happened to me was wrong. But as I've investigated further, I've learned that what happened to me has happened to many other passengers over the past 2 years. People of color, people of different religions, people who were made to feel unwelcome in their own seats on airplanes that I own." Ella's voice grew stronger. "This stops today. I am taking direct control of Torres Aviation. I have removed the CEO who allowed this culture to develop, and I am implementing immediate changes to ensure that every passenger, regardless of race, religion, or background, is treated with dignity and respect." A reporter in the third row raised her hand. "Mrs. Torres, what about Harper James? Is she fired?" Before Ella could answer, Harper stood up. The entire room turned to look at her. "I'd like to address that," Harper said loudly, "if Mrs. Torres doesn't mind." Ella's stomach twisted, but she kept her face calm. "Go ahead." Harper walked toward the stage. Her lawyer tried to grab her arm, but she shook him off. She climbed the 3 steps and stood next to Ella at the podium. Up close, Ella could see that Harper looked different than yesterday. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. Her hands trembled slightly. "My name is Harper James," she said into the microphone. Her voice cracked a little. "I'm the flight attendant from the video, and I want to say that I'm sorry." The room went completely silent. Ella stared at Harper in shock. "I was wrong," Harper continued. Tears started rolling down her cheeks. "I was so wrong. What I did to Mrs. Torres was terrible. It was racist. There's no other word for it. I looked at her and made assumptions based on her skin color, and that's inexcusable." Harper turned to face Ella directly. "Mrs. Torres, I am deeply sorry. I know my apology doesn't fix what I did. I know it doesn't take away the pain I caused you. But I need you to know that I've spent the last 24 hours thinking about my actions, about my life, about the person I've become. And I'm disgusted with myself." Ella didn't know what to say. This wasn't what she'd expected. Not at all. "I deserve to be fired," Harper said, turning back to reporters. "I deserve all the criticism coming my way. But I want to use this moment to say something important. I wasn't born a racist. I became one. Little by little, over years, I absorbed ideas and attitudes from the culture around me, from media, from jokes people made, from subtle messages that told me some people were worth more than others." Harper wiped her tears. "And the worst part? The company I worked for, this company, they allowed it. They saw complaints about me and other flight attendants, and they did nothing. They protected us instead of protecting the passengers we were hurting." Ella's eyes narrowed. Where was Harper going with this? "Mrs. Torres says she didn't know," Harper continued. "And maybe that's true, but the CEO knew. David Mitchell knew. And there's something else he knew. Something that Mrs. Torres apparently doesn't know yet. Here it comes," Ella thought. "The bomb." Harper pulled a piece of paper from her pocket. "This is an email from David Mitchell to the HR department, dated 6 months ago. Would you like me to read it, Mrs. Torres?" Ella's heart pounded. Go ahead. Harper read. Regarding the Torres matter, continue to keep all discrimination complaints and internal issues away from her awareness. She's asked to be kept out of daily operations, so we're honoring that request. What she doesn't know won't hurt her, and it definitely won't hurt our bottom line. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed like lightning. Ella felt like she'd been slapped. David had deliberately hidden things from her. He'd used her own desire for privacy against her. But Harper wasn't done. There's more, she said. She pulled out another paper. This is a memo from David Mitchell to senior staff, dated 1 year ago. It says, Mrs. Torres has made it clear she wants to focus on her family and other business interests. She's essentially retired from active management. Use your own judgment on operational matters. Don't bother her unless absolutely necessary. Ella's face burned. She'd never said that. Never. Yes, she'd stepped back from daily operations, but she'd never said they shouldn't tell her about important issues. Harper looked at Ella with something that might have been pity. Mrs. Torres, I'm not defending what I did, but I want people to understand that this wasn't just about one racist flight attendant. This was about a system that David Mitchell built specifically to keep you in the dark while he ran the company however he wanted. The man in the dark suit stood up from the front row. If I may add something, he said loudly. Ella's blood ran cold. She suddenly recognized him. Richard Carson. He was a business reporter for the Wall Street Journal, one of the best investigative journalists in the country. I've been investigating Torres Aviation for 3 months, Richard said, long before yesterday's incident. I found evidence that David Mitchell has been doing more than just hiding discrimination complaints. He held up a folder thick with papers. He's been stealing from the company, embezzling funds, paying himself bonuses that were never approved by the board, creating fake vendor contracts, and pocketing the money. Mrs. Torres, over the past 3 years, David Mitchell has stolen approximately $12 million from your airline. The room exploded. Everyone was shouting now. Reporters pushed forward, trying to get closer to stage. Ella gripped the podium to keep from falling. $12 million? Embezzlement? This couldn't be real. I have documents, Richard continued, raising his voice over the chaos. Bank statements, emails, financial records. I was planning to publish my story next week, but given current events, I thought Mrs. Torres deserved to know the truth now. He walked to the stage and handed the folder to Ella. It's all in there. David Mitchell didn't just betray your values, Mrs. Torres. He betrayed your trust and stole your money. And he did it all while making sure you were kept too far away to notice. Ella opened the folder with shaking hands. Her eyes scanned the pages. Bank transfers to offshore accounts. Invoices for services that were never performed. Bonuses paid consultants who didn't exist. It was all there, all true. She looked up at the crowd of reporters, at Harper standing beside her, at Richard Carson with his knowing expression. I need a moment, Ella said quietly. But the reporters weren't giving her a moment. They were shouting questions, demanding answers. Did you know about the embezzlement? Are you going to press charges? Is the airline bankrupt? Mrs. Torres, how could you not know this was happening? That last question hit her like a knife. How could she not know? Because she trusted. She believed that David Mitchell shared her values. She'd stepped back because she thought the company was in good hands. She'd been a fool. I need everyone to leave, Ella said. Her voice was barely audible. No one moved. The questions kept coming. I said leave. Ella's voice cracked like thunder. Everyone out. This press conference is over. Patricia appeared from the side, along with security guards. Please, everyone, we need you to exit the building. Mrs. Torres will release a statement later. Slowly, reluctantly, the reporters began to file out, but they were all on their phones, already writing stories, already spreading the news. Harper approached Ella. Mrs. Torres, I know this doesn't mean much now, but I really am sorry. For everything. Ella looked at her with tired eyes. Why did you do this? Why did you help expose David? Harper's smile was sad. Because Richard found me yesterday. He told me about his investigation. He showed me the evidence. And he made me realize something. I was just a symptom. David Mitchell was the disease. If people only focus on me, the real problem would never get fixed. So you sacrifice yourself. I did what I should have done months ago. I told the truth. Harper paused. And honestly, I'm relieved. Living with that guilt, with knowing what I'd done to you and others, it was eating me alive. At least now it's out in the open. She walked away, leaving Ella alone on the stage. Patricia rushed over. Mrs. Torres, what do you want me to do? Ella looked at the folder in her hands. $12 million. Stolen. From her company. From her. Get me my lawyer, Ella said quietly. And call the police. David Mitchell is going to jail. Yes, ma'am. And Mrs. Torres? The union president called. Rebecca Thompson. She says now that the embezzlement story is out, the union is withdrawing their strike threat. She says they want to help clean up the company, not destroy it. Ella nodded slowly. That was something, at least. She walked off the stage and went to her office. She closed the door and locked it. Then she sank into her chair and finally let herself cry. She cried for the passengers who'd been hurt. She cried for her own humiliation. She cried for the betrayal of someone she trusted. She cried for the company she'd built being torn apart in the media. She cried until there were no more tears left. Then she wiped her eyes, took a deep breath, and opened her laptop. She had work to do. First, she emailed her lawyer with instructions to file criminal charges against David Mitchell. Then she emailed her accountant to begin a full audit of the company's finances. Then she started drafting a plan for restructuring the entire airline, new training programs, new hiring practices, new accountability measures. She worked for 3 hours straight, no breaks, no food, just work. At 6 p.m., her phone rang. It was Sarah. Mom, I just watched the press conference. Are you okay? I'm fine, baby. You're not fine. Mom, come stay with me tonight. You shouldn't be alone. I can't. I have too much work. Mom, please, just for tonight. Ella hesitated. Then she realized Sarah was right. She couldn't do this alone. Not tonight. Okay, she said softly. I'll be there in an hour. She packed up her laptop and headed for the elevator. As she walked through the building, she noticed that most people had gone home. The place felt empty, hollow. In the parking lot, the news vans were gone. But there was someone waiting by her car. Harper James. Ella stopped walking. What are you doing here? Harper held up her hands. I'm not here to cause trouble. I wanted to give you something. She held out a small notebook. This is a list of every passenger I remember treating badly over the years. Names, dates, what happened. I don't know if you can find them all, but I thought you might want to try to make things right with them. Apologize. Offer them free flights or something. I don't know. Ella took the notebook. She flipped through it, page after page of names and incidents. There had to be 50 entries, maybe more. Why are you doing this? Ella asked. Harper's eyes were red again. Because I need to do something good. Something to balance out all the bad I've done. And because I grew up in a house where my father said terrible things about people who didn't look like us. Where I learned that some people mattered less than others. And I never questioned it. I just absorbed it. She wiped her eyes. But yesterday when I saw your face, when I saw how much I hurt you, something broke inside me. I realized I'd become my father. And I don't want to be him anymore. Ella studied Harper's face. She saw genuine pain there. Genuine remorse. You're still fired, Ella said quietly. What you did was wrong, and there have to be consequences. I know. I'm not asking for my job back. I'm just asking. I don't know what I'm asking. Forgiveness, maybe, or just understanding that I'm trying to be better. Ella thought about that, about forgiveness, about change, about whether people could really become better than they were. Harper, Ella said slowly, I can't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. What you did hurt me in ways you can't fully understand. But I believe you're sorry. And I believe you're trying to change. That's a start. Harper nodded, tears streaming down her face. Thank you. That's more than I deserve. She turned to leave, then stopped. Mrs. Torres? One more thing. David Mitchell? He called me this afternoon. He offered me money, a lot of money, to lie at the press conference, to say that you knew about the discrimination all along, that you told him to cover it up. Ella's blood went cold. What? I said no, obviously, but I thought you should know. He's planning something. He's not going down without a fight. With that, Harper walked away into the gathering darkness. Ella stood alone in the parking lot, holding the notebook, her mind spinning. David was planning something, a counterattack. She pulled out her phone and called her lawyer. We need to move faster on the charges against David. He's planning to... Ella, I was just about to call you. We have a big problem. David Mitchell just filed a lawsuit against you. He's claiming that you committed fraud by hiding your ownership of the airline. He says you used your secret status to manipulate company decisions without oversight. He's suing for wrongful termination and demanding $50 million in damages. Ella leaned against her car. Can he do that? His lawyers think so. And Ella? There's more. He scheduled his own press conference for tomorrow morning. He's going to tell his side of the story. And based on the language in his lawsuit, he's planning to paint you as the villain in all of this. Ella closed her eyes. Of course he was. Of course. What do we do? She asked. I don't know yet, but we need to be ready. Whatever David says tomorrow, it's going to be bad. Really bad. Ella hung up and got in her car. She drove to Sarah's house in a daze, her mind trying to process everything that had happened. When she arrived, Sarah opened the door and immediately pulled her into a hug. Oh, Mom. Ella hugged her daughter tight and felt some of the tension leave her body. Her 3 grandchildren came running. Miguel, age 10, Sophia, age 8, and little Marcus, age 5, named after his grandfather. They didn't know about the press conference or the scandal. They just knew their grandmother was here, and they were happy. For the next 2 hours, Ella played games with them, read them stories, helped Sophia with her homework. She let herself be grandma instead of the owner of a failing airline. After the kids were in bed, Ella and Sarah sat in the kitchen drinking tea. Are you going to be okay? Sarah asked. I don't know, Ella answered honestly. Everything's falling apart. The discrimination, the embezzlement, the lawsuits, David's press conference tomorrow. Sarah, I don't know if I can save the company. Sarah reached across the table and took her mother's hand. Mom, do you remember what you told me when I was starting my business? When everyone said I'd fail, I told you that failure only happens when you stop trying. Exactly. You've been fighting your whole life, Mom. You didn't stop when Grandpa died. You didn't stop when people said a black woman couldn't run a major airline. You didn't stop when the economy crashed and almost took your company with it. You're not going to stop now. Ella squeezed her daughter's hand. What if I can't fix it? What if it's too broken? Then you rebuild. That's what you do. That's who you are. They sat in silence for a while, just holding hands across the kitchen table. Finally, Ella stood up. I need to see David's lawsuit. All of it. Tonight. She went to the guest room and opened her laptop. Her lawyer had sent over the full legal filing. Ella started reading. The more she read, the angrier she became. David was lying. He was twisting facts, manipulating timelines, making it sound like Ella had deliberately hidden her ownership to avoid accountability. He was claiming that she'd known about the discrimination and embezzlement all along, and had only pretended to be shocked when the videos went viral. It was all lies, but they were clever lies, the kind that might convince a jury. At midnight, Ella's phone buzzed with a news alert. She looked at the screen, and her heart sank. Breaking. David Mitchell to reveal shocking truth about Torres Aviation owner at tomorrow's press conference. Former CEO claims evidence of cover-up goes to the top. Ella put down her phone and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow was going to be the fight of her life. But as she lay there in the darkness, something occurred to her. Something David didn't know. Something that might change everything. She grabbed her phone and made a call. Richard Carson? This is Ella Torres. I know it's late, but I need your help. You said you've been investigating David Mitchell for 3 months. That means you have more than just financial records. You have sources, people who worked with him, people who know the truth. That's right, Richard said slowly. I have quite a bit of material I haven't published yet. How would you like an exclusive? Full access to everything in the company. Every file, every email, every document. In exchange, you help me expose every lie David Mitchell is planning to tell tomorrow. There was a long pause. Then, I'm listening. Ella smiled in the darkness. Good, because I'm done playing defense. Tomorrow we go on the attack. She spent the next 3 hours on the phone with Richard, with her lawyer, with her accountant. Planning, strategizing, building a case. By 3 a.m., they had a plan. It was risky. It might not work, but it was the best shot they had. Ella finally fell asleep around 4 a.m., her phone clutched in her hand. She dreamed of flying, of soaring above the clouds, free and weightless, of looking down at all her problems and seeing them shrink to nothing. But when she woke up at 7 a.m., those problems were still there, bigger than ever. David Mitchell's press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. Ella had 3 hours to get ready. 3 hours to prepare for the battle that would determine whether she kept her company or lost everything. She got dressed slowly, choosing her clothes carefully. Another suit, this one charcoal gray. Her mother's pearls again, for luck. Sarah drove her to Torres Aviation headquarters. The parking lot was packed with news vans. There had to be twice as many as yesterday. Mom, Sarah said as Ella reached for the door handle. Whatever happens in there, I'm proud of you. Ella kissed her daughter's cheek. Thank you, baby. Now go home. Take care of those kids. I'll call you when it's over. She walked into the building. Patricia met her at the door. Mrs. Torres, David Mitchell is already here. He's in the main conference room with his lawyers and about 50 reporters. He's refusing to leave unless you have him arrested. Of course he is. Ella smiled grimly. Well, if he wants to do this in my building, let him. But I want our people in that room too. Every senior staff member. Every department head. I want them to hear what he says. Yes, ma'am. And Mrs. Torres? Richard Carson is here. He says he has the documents you need. Ella nodded. Send him to my office. I'll meet him there. 5 minutes later, Richard walked in with a briefcase full of papers. I have everything, he said. Email printouts, financial statements, witness testimony from 4 former employees. Ella, this is going to destroy him. Good. Ella's voice was hard. He tried to destroy me. Now it's his turn. At 9:45 a.m., Ella walked down the hallway toward the conference room. She could hear David's voice, loud and confident, talking to reporters. She pushed open the door. The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at her. David stood at the front of the room, microphone in hand. He smiled when he saw her, but it was a cold smile. Predatory. Ella, he said, how good of you to join us. I was just telling everyone here about the real story behind Torres Aviation. The story you don't want people to know. Ella walked to the front of the room. She stood next to David, close enough that he had to step back. Then, by all means, she said softly, tell your story, David. Tell everyone your truth. She gestured to the reporters. I'm listening. David's smile widened. He thought he'd won. He thought she was broken. He had no idea what was about to hit him. Thank you, Ella. I'm glad you're here to face the truth. He turned to the reporters. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to tell you will shock you, but I have evidence for everything. Ella Torres has been lying to you all, and I'm going to prove it. He clicked a button, and a presentation appeared on the screen behind him. Ella stood perfectly still, her face calm, but inside, her heart was pounding. This was it, the moment that would decide everything. David Mitchell clicked to the first slide on his presentation. It showed a photo of Ella shaking hands with him on the day he was hired as CEO, both of them smiling. This was taken 5 years ago. David began, his voice smooth and confident. The day Ella Torres hired me to run Torres Aviation, she told me that day that she wanted to step away from operations, that she was tired, that she wanted to focus on her family and let someone else handle the hard decisions. He clicked to the next slide. It was an email blown up large enough for everyone to read. This is from Ella Torres to me, dated 3 years ago. Let me read the important part. David, I trust you completely to run the airline as you see fit. I don't want to be bothered with daily operations or minor problems. Only contact me for major decisions that require board approval. Murmurs rippled through the crowd of reporters. Ella saw them looking at her, their expression skeptical. David clicked again. Another email appeared, and this one from 2 years ago. David, I appreciate the updates, but honestly, I don't need that much detail. Use your best judgment. That's why I hired you. He turned to face Ella directly. You gave me full control, Ella. You told me repeatedly that you didn't want to know about problems. And now you're standing here claiming you had no idea what was happening? That I kept you in the dark. He laughed bitterly. You asked to be kept in the dark. More clicks, more emails, each one making Ella look worse. Disconnected, uninterested, absent. The truth, David said, his voice rising, is that Ella Torres was a silent owner who didn't care what happened as long as the money kept flowing into her bank account. She didn't care about discrimination complaints. She didn't care about employee issues. She didn't care about anything except profit. Ella's lawyer, sitting in the back row, looked panicked. He made a cut-it-off motion with his hand, signaling Ella to stop this press conference immediately. But Ella didn't move. She just watched David, her face expressionless. And when her airline got caught on video treating passengers badly, David continued, suddenly she cared, not because it was wrong, but because it hurt her reputation. So she threw me under the bus. She fired me. She's planning to fire dozens of other employees, all to save herself. He clicked to a new slide. This one showed financial statements. And speaking of finances, let's talk about those embezzlement accusations. Yes, I moved money. Yes, I created certain financial arrangements. But I did it all with Ella's knowledge and approval. Every single transaction was reviewed and signed off on by the owner of this company. Ella's lawyer stood up. That's a lie. Mrs. Torres never proved. I have signatures. David shouted, holding up a stack of papers. Right here. Ella Torres' signature on documents approving bonuses, consultant fees, and vendor contracts. All of it. She knew exactly what was happening, and now she's pretending she didn't. The reporters erupted with questions, shouting over each other. Cameras flashed like crazy. The energy in the room was electric, chaotic. Ella finally moved. She walked slowly to David and held out her hand. May I see those signatures? David smiled triumphantly and handed her the papers. Ella looked at them carefully. One by one, her face showed nothing. Then she looked up at David. These aren't my signatures. Of course they are. No. Ella's voice cut through the noise like a knife. They're forgeries. Good forgeries, I'll admit, but forgeries nonetheless. She turned to the reporters. My signature has a very specific characteristic. When I sign my name, I always make a small loop in the T of Torres. It's a habit I developed 40 years ago when I started my first business. Every signature I've ever written has that loop. She held up the papers. These signatures don't have it, which means David forged them. David's face went pale. That's ridiculous. You're making that up. Am I? Ella pulled out her phone. Richard Carson, could you please come up here? Richard walked to front, carrying his briefcase. He pulled out a thick folder and handed it to Ella. These, Ella said, holding up the folder, are documents with my real signature on them. Board meeting minutes, legal contracts, official company documents. You can compare them to the ones David just showed you. She handed papers to several reporters in the front row. They examined them closely, comparing signatures. She's right, one reporter said slowly. The signatures are different. The ones Mr. Mitchell showed us don't have a loop in the T. David's confident expression cracked. Well, maybe you change your signature. People do that. For 40 years? Ella's voice was ice. I've had the same signature for 40 years, David. And you would know that if you'd actually looked at the real documents before you forged fake ones. Richard stepped forward. I'd like to add something. I've been investigating Mr. Mitchell for 3 months. During that time, I interviewed 18 current and former employees of Torres Aviation. Would you like to know what they told me? David's jaw clenched. I'm sure you have some disgruntled employees willing to lie. They told me that you specifically instructed them not to bother Mrs. Torres with complaints or problems, Richard continued, ignoring the interruption. They told me you created a culture of secrecy, that you told people if they went over your head to the owner, they'd be fired. He pulled out a recording device. I have 4 of those interviews recorded with permission. Would you like me to play them? This is a setup. David shouted. His face was red now, sweat beading on his forehead. Ella planned this. She knew I was going to speak the truth, so she manufactured fake evidence. Like you manufacture fake signatures? Ella asked quietly. The room went silent. Ella looked at David, really looked at him, and saw a man who was cornered, desperate, dangerous. David, she said softly, I trusted you. I gave you control because I believe you share my values. Yes, I stepped back from daily operations. Yes, I told you to use your judgment. But I never told you to hide discrimination from me. I never told you to steal from the company. And I certainly never signed off on any of your illegal activities. She turned to the reporters. You want to know the truth? Here it is. I made a mistake. I trusted the wrong person. I believed that hiring a qualified CEO meant I could focus on other areas of my life, my family, my other businesses, my health. And David Mitchell took advantage of that trust. She clicked the presentation remote, and David's slides disappeared. New slides appeared, ones Ella had prepared with Richard's help early that morning. This, Ella said, pointing to the screen, is a timeline of David Mitchell's activities over the past 3 years. In month 1, he began restructuring the HR department to report directly to him instead of to an independent board committee. Why? So he could control what information reached the board and me. Click. Next slide. In month 4, he created a policy that all discrimination complaints had to be reviewed by his office before being filed officially. The result? Dozens of complaints never made it into the official record. Click. In month 7, he set up shell companies and began creating fake vendor contracts. Money went out to these vendors, but the services were never provided. The money went into offshore accounts that David controlled. Click. Over 3 years, this pattern continued and expanded. David built a system designed to keep me away from the truth while he enriched himself and let discrimination flourish unchecked. She turned to face David. You used my trust as a weapon against me. You used my desire for work-life balance as cover for your crimes. And when you got caught, you tried to blame me. David's hands were shaking. His lawyer stood up and whispered urgently in his ear. I'm not done, David said, his voice cracking. You can't just... You don't have all the facts. Don't I? Ella clicked again. The screen showed a bank transfer. This is from 8 days ago. You transferred $2 million from a company account to an offshore bank in the Cayman Islands. 8 days ago, David. After you were already fired. That's not embezzlement. That's theft. The reporters exploded with questions. David stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I have more, Ella continued. Her voice was strong now, powerful. I have emails where you told managers to get rid of troublesome passengers. Code for allowing discrimination. I have financial records showing you paid yourself bonuses that were never approved by anyone. I have testimony from employees who you threatened with termination if they told me the truth. She stepped closer to David. And I have something else. Something you don't know about. David's eyes went wide. What are you talking about? Ella smiled. A cold, hard smile. Patricia, could you please bring in our visitor? Patricia opened a side door, and a woman walked in. She was in her 40s, wearing a professional suit, carrying a briefcase. She looked terrified but determined. David's face went completely white. Linda, he whispered. Hello, David, the woman said quietly. Ella turned to the reporters. This is Linda Foster. She was David Mitchell's executive assistant for 4 years. Linda, would you please tell everyone why you're here? Linda's hands trembled as she opened her briefcase and pulled out a USB drive. For the past 2 years, I watched Mr. Mitchell do terrible things. I watched him hide complaints. I watched him steal money. I watched him forge Mrs. Torres' signature on documents. Her voice grew stronger, and I kept copies of everything. Every email he asked me to delete. Every document he told me to shred. Every conversation where he talked about keeping Mrs. Torres in the dark. It's all here. She held up the USB drive. Thousands of files, text messages, recorded phone calls, with his permission, because Ohio is a one-party consent state, and I was on those calls. Everything. David lunged toward her, but 2 security guards who'd been standing by the walls moved quickly to block him. You can't. You had no right, David sputtered. I had every right, Linda said, her voice sharp. I was following my conscience. Something you stopped doing a long time ago. She turned to Ella. Mrs. Torres, I'm so sorry. I should have come to you sooner. But I was afraid. David said he'd ruin my career if I ever spoke up. He said no one would believe me over him. Ella's expression softened. I believe you, Linda. Thank you for being brave enough to come forward. She turned back to the reporters. So yes, David is right about one thing. I did step back from daily operations, and that was a mistake. Not because I was lazy or didn't care, but because I trusted the wrong person to carry out my vision for this company. She took a deep breath. But I'm not stepping back anymore. As of today, I'm taking full, active control of Torres Aviation. I will be in the office every single day. I will review every complaint personally. I will rebuild this airline from the ground up to reflect the values I've held my entire life. Dignity, respect, and equality for everyone. A reporter raised her hand. Mrs. Torres, what about the lawsuits? David's wrongful termination suit? Harper James's potential defamation claim? Harper James isn't suing, Ella said. We spoke yesterday, and she understands that her termination was justified. As for David's lawsuit, she looked at him with contempt. Bring it on. I have evidence of criminal activity. By the time this is over, you won't be suing me, David. You'll be in prison. David's lawyer grabbed his arm. Don't say anything else. We're leaving. Now. But David shook him off. This isn't over, Ella. You think you won? You haven't. I have friends. Powerful friends. People who can make your life very difficult. Are you threatening me? Ella's voice was dangerously quiet. I'm promising you. You're going to regret this. 2 police officers entered the room from the back. Ella had called them before the press conference, and they'd been waiting outside. David Mitchell, one officer said, we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of embezzlement, fraud, and forgery. David's face went from red to gray. You can't. I have rights. You have the right to remain silent, the officer said, pulling out handcuffs. I suggest you use it. As they led David out of the room in handcuffs, reporters shouted questions and cameras flashed. David tried to pull away, tried to shout something, but his lawyer clapped a hand over his mouth and hustled him out the door. The room erupted in chaos. Every reporter was trying to ask Ella questions at once. Ella raised her hand again, and gradually, the noise died down. I know you have many questions, she said. I'll answer them all. But first, I want to say something to the passengers who were hurt by the culture David Mitchell created. I am deeply, profoundly sorry. What happened to you is wrong. It never should have happened, and I take responsibility for not being vigilant enough to prevent it. Her voice trembled slightly. To those passengers, some of whom are here in this room today, I want to offer a personal apology and make amends. If you were discriminated against on my airline, please contact us. We will provide compensation. We will provide a sincere apology, and we will make sure nothing like this ever happens again. She paused. And to the employees who knew this was wrong but were too afraid to speak up, I understand. David Mitchell created a culture of fear, but that culture ends today. From now on, if you see something wrong, you can report it directly to me. No middle management. No HR department run by the CEO. straight to me. A reporter in the front row stood up. Mrs. Torres, how can passengers trust that these changes are real? How do we know this isn't just damage control? Ellen nodded. That's a fair question. Here's my answer. I'm implementing several changes immediately. First, all flight attendants and customer service staff will undergo mandatory anti-discrimination training. Starting next week, anyone who refuses or fails the training will be terminated. She clicked to a new slide showing a phone number and email address. Second, we're creating an independent passenger advocacy office. This office will be run by someone outside the company. With no connection to management, passengers can report issues directly to this office, and it will report findings directly to me and to the public. Another click. Third, we're implementing body cameras for all customer service interactions at gates and on planes, not to spy on employees, but to protect both passengers and staff. If there's ever a dispute about what happened, we'll have clear evidence. A murmur went through the crowd. That was bold. No other airline did that. Fourth, Ella continued, we're creating a passenger bill of rights that will be posted in every airport, on every plane, and on our website. It will clearly state what treatment passengers can expect and what to do if those standards aren't met. She clicked to the final slide. It showed a number, $50 million. And finally, I'm personally establishing a fund of $50 million. This money will be used to compensate passengers who are discriminated against, to fund ongoing diversity and inclusion training, and to support organizations that fight discrimination in the travel industry. The reporters sat in stunned silence. $50 million? Someone finally asked. That's coming from you personally? Yes. It's the least I can do. No amount of money can undo the pain that was caused, but it's a start. A reporter in the back raised his hand. What about the financial impact? Your stock dropped 30% yesterday. You've lost hundreds of millions in market value. Can the airline survive this? Ella's expression was calm. I'm not worried about stock prices. I'm worried about doing what's right. If the airline fails because we chose to treat people with dignity and respect, then it deserves to fail. But I don't think it will fail. I think passengers will reward us for having the courage to change. Another reporter. What about Harper James? You said she was fired. Does she get any of that compensation money? No. Harper was an employee who engaged in discriminatory behavior. She's facing consequences for her actions. The fund is for passengers who were hurt, not for employees who did the hurting. But she apologized. She seemed genuinely sorry. Ella paused, considering her words carefully. Harper may be sorry. I believe she is. But being sorry doesn't erase what she did. Actions have consequences. However, she took a breath. If Harper wants to be part of the solution, there may be opportunities for that in the future. Not as an employee, but perhaps as someone who can speak to other companies about how discrimination happens and how to prevent it. A voice called out from the middle of the room. Mrs. Torres, I have a question. Ella looked toward the voice and felt her breath catch. It was a young black man, maybe 30 years old, dressed in a nice suit. He stood up, and Ella saw tears in his eyes. I was one of the passengers in those complaint files, he said. His voice shook. 3 years ago, I was flying first class to my father's funeral. A flight attendant told me I needed to move to economy because she didn't think my ticket looked right. When I argued, she called security. They searched my bags in front of everyone. Looking for drugs, they said, because apparently a young black man in first class must be a drug dealer. The room was completely silent. They didn't find anything, of course, he continued. But they still made me move to economy. And when I filed a complaint, I got a form letter saying the matter had been investigated and resolved. No apology, no explanation, nothing. He wiped his eyes. I stopped flying with your airline after that. I told everyone I knew to avoid it. And when I saw that video of you being treated the same way I was, his voice broke. I was angry because now that it happened to the owner, suddenly it mattered. But when it happened to me, to all of us, nobody cared. Ella felt tears running down her own cheeks. You're right, she said quietly. You're absolutely right. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She stepped down from the podium and walked toward him. What's your name? Marcus. Marcus Henderson. Ella's breath hitched. Marcus. The same name as her late husband. Marcus, I failed you. I failed everyone in those complaint files. And I know my apology now doesn't change what happened to you 3 years ago. But I promise you, I swear to you, that I will spend every day for the rest of my life making sure it never happens again. Not to you, not to anyone. Marcus nodded slowly. I want to believe you. Then watch me. Hold me accountable. If you see me failing, call me out. Here's my personal phone number. Ella pulled out a business card and wrote on it. If you ever have a problem with my airline, you call me directly, day or night. I'll answer. She handed him the card. Marcus looked at it, then at her. Why are you doing this? Because it's right. And because I understand now, in a way I didn't before, what it feels like to be judged by the color of your skin instead of the content of your character. Marcus took the card. Then, slowly he extended his hand. Ella shook it, and she felt something shift in the room. A softening, a cautious hope. Another person stood up, an older Asian woman. I was denied an upgrade I paid for because the gate agent said she needed to verify I could speak English well enough for first class. I speak 4 languages fluently. I have a PhD in linguistics. Ella walked to her. I'm sorry. That was wrong, and it never should have happened. Another person stood, a Hispanic man. They searched my carry-on 3 times because they said it looked suspicious. It was a laptop and some books. Another, a Muslim woman in a hijab. They asked me to remove my headscarf for security reasons. When I refused, they wouldn't let me board until a supervisor said it was okay. I missed my flight. One by one, passengers stood up and told their stories. Each one was a knife to Ella's heart. Each one was proof of how badly she'd failed in her responsibility as an owner. When they finished, Ella looked around the room at all these faces. People who'd been hurt in her airline, on her watch. I hear you, she said. All of you. And I'm going to fix this. It won't happen overnight. It won't be easy. But I'm going to fix it. A reporter stood up. Mrs. Torres, one final question. After everything that's happened, the humiliation, the betrayal, the financial losses, the lawsuits, do you regret buying this airline? Ella was quiet for a long moment. She thought about Marcus, her husband, who'd encouraged her by the airline 15 years ago. She thought about all the good employees who work hard every day. She thought about the millions of passengers who'd flown safely and happily on her planes. And she thought about yesterday at the gate, standing there feeling small and powerless and worthless. No, she said finally, I don't regret it. Because if I hadn't bought this airline, I wouldn't be in a position to fix it now. Someone else would own it, and maybe they wouldn't care enough to make these changes. Maybe they'd just do more damage control and move on. She stood up straighter. What happened to me was terrible, but it opened my eyes. It showed me that my company had problems I didn't see or didn't want to see, and now I can fix them. So no, I don't regret it. I regret not being more involved sooner. But I don't regret being in a position to make things right. The press conference ended with thunderous applause, something Ella hadn't expected. Reporters who'd been skeptical at the start were now nodding, some even wiping their own eyes. As the room cleared out, Patricia approached Ella. Ma'am, that was incredible. You were incredible. Ella smiled tiredly. Thank you, Patricia. Now comes the hard part, actually doing everything I promise. You will. I believe in you. Ella's phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. Mom, I'm watching on the news. I'm so proud of you. Dad would be too. Ella felt fresh tears coming. She excused herself and went to her office. She closed the door and sat down at her desk. On the wall, Marcus's photo smiled at her. Well, she said to the picture, that was something. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Mrs. Torres? This is Governor Patricia Hartman. I just watched your press conference. I want you to know that I'm proud to have you as a business leader in Ohio. What you did today, taking responsibility, making real changes. That's real leadership. Thank you, Governor. That means a lot. I'm calling because I'd like to invite you to speak at the State House next month. We're having a summit on corporate responsibility and discrimination. Your story and your commitment to change would be powerful for other business leaders to hear. Ella hesitated. A month ago, she would have said no. She didn't like public speaking. She didn't like attention. But a month ago, she hadn't been humiliated at an airport gate. She hadn't discovered the rot in her own company. She hadn't looked into the eyes of passengers she'd failed. I'll do it, Ella said. Thank you for the invitation. After she hung up, Ella sat quietly for a moment. Then she opened her laptop and got to work. She had an airline to rebuild. But as she typed out her first company-wide email announcing the new policies, her office door burst open. Patricia stood there, her face pale. Mrs. Torres, you need to see this. Right now. She held out her tablet. On the screen was a breaking news alert. Former Torres Aviation CEO David Mitchell released on bail. Claims of evidence that will destroy Ella Torres and bring down the entire airline. Ella's blood ran cold. What evidence? What's he talking about? Patricia scrolled down. He held a brief press conference after he was released. He says he has recordings. Secret recordings he made over the past 5 years. Conversations with you where you allegedly approved everything he did. He says he's releasing them tomorrow. Ella's mind raced. Recordings? Of what? She'd had so few conversations with David. Most of their communication was by email, unless her stomach dropped. 5 years ago, when David was first hired, they'd had several long phone calls, strategy discussions, Ella's vision for the company. And in one of those calls, she remembered now, she'd said something that could be taken out of context. She'd said, David, I trust you to handle problems without bringing them to me every time. Use your judgment. If David had recorded that, if he edited it just right, if he presented it without context. Oh, no, Ella whispered. Patricia's phone rang. She answered it, listened for a moment, and then hung up looking even more worried. That was our PR firm. They say David's lawyer is already shopping the recordings to news networks. CNN is going to air them tomorrow night. They're calling it the Torres tapes. The truth behind the scandal. Ella stood up. Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself to stay standing. Get Linda Foster on the phone, Ella said, and Richard Carson, and my lawyer. Get them all here now. Yes, ma'am. But Mrs. Torres, what if the recordings are real? What if they really do sound like you approved? Then we fight harder, Ella said firmly. I've come this far. I'm not stopping now. But as Patricia hurried out to make the calls, Ella sank back into her chair. This wasn't over. Not even close. David Mitchell was going to try to destroy her one more time. And tomorrow, the entire world will be watching to see if he succeeded. Ella didn't go home that night. She stayed at the office, surrounded by her lawyer, Richard Carson, Linda Foster, and a team of crisis management experts who'd flown in from New York. They set up camp in the main conference room, ordering pizza that no one ate and drinking coffee by the gallon. At 11 p.m., Richard's contact at CNN sent him a preview of the recordings David was releasing. They listened in silence as David Mitchell's voice filled the room, smooth and professional. Ella, I need to talk to you about some passenger complaints we've been receiving. Then Ella's voice, tired and distracted. David, I trust you to handle problems without bringing them to me every time. Use your judgment. That's why I hired you. The recording cut off. Ella closed her eyes. That was from 5 years ago. We were talking about minor issues, lost luggage, flight delays, customer service complaints. Normal airline operations, not discrimination. I know, her lawyer said, but without context, it sounds like you're giving him permission to hide anything from you. Richard played the next recording. This one was worse. David's voice. Some of these complaints could become problematic if they're not handled correctly. Ella's voice. Well, do what you need to do. I don't want this company dragged through negative press for every little thing. The recording stopped. When was that? Ella's lawyer asked. Ella thought hard, trying to remember. Maybe 4 years ago. We were dealing with some bad reviews on social media from passengers who were upset about canceled flights during a storm. I was telling him to manage the situation professionally, not to sweep discrimination under the rug. Linda leaned forward. Mrs. Torres, I was working for David back then. I remember that conversation differently than he's presenting it. You two talked for almost an hour that day. He's only playing 30 seconds. Do you have the full recording? Richard asked eagerly. Linda shook her head. No, he kept those recordings private. I didn't even know they existed until now. Ella stood up and paced the room. Her mind was spinning, trying to figure out what to do. How many recordings does he have? According to CNN, at least 6, Richard said. All edited down to make you look like you knew about and approved of discrimination and embezzlement. This is character assassination, Ella's lawyer said. We can sue for defamation. That takes time we don't have, Ella interrupted. CNN is airing this tomorrow night. By then, the damage will be done. The public will think I'm a liar. Everything I said at the press conference today will be worthless. The room fell silent. Everyone knew she was right. Patricia knocked on the door and entered. Mrs. Torres, I hate to add to your problems, but I just got off the phone with 3 major corporate clients. They're canceling their contracts with us. They don't want to be associated with the scandal. How much is that worth? Ella asked quietly. About $20 million a year. Ella nodded slowly. Her company was hemorrhaging money and reputation by the hour. Her phone buzzed. It was Sarah, calling for the 5th time that night. Ella had been ignoring her calls, not wanting her daughter to worry, but she picked up this time. Mom, where are you? It's almost midnight. I'm at the office, baby, working on something. Mom, you need rest. You need to come home. You've been through so much. I can't, Sarah. David Mitchell is releasing recordings tomorrow that make me look guilty. If I don't figure out how to fight this, everything I built, everything your father and I built together, will be destroyed. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then, what can I do to help? Ella felt tears prick her eyes. Just pray, baby. Just pray. After hanging up, Ella walked to a window. Down below, she could see a few news vans still parked in the lot, reporters probably sleeping in their vehicles, waiting for tomorrow's story. There has to be something we're missing, she said, more to herself than anyone else. Something that can prove David is manipulating these recordings. Linda stood up suddenly. Wait, Mrs. Torres, did David ever video call you? Video call? No, we always just talked on the phone. Why? Because David kept detailed calendars. Obsessively detailed. Every meeting, every call, every email, he logged everything, including time stamps. Linda's eyes were bright with excitement. If we can prove that the conversations he's playing happened at specific times, and if we can show what else was happening during those calls, we might be able to provide context. Richard caught on immediately. The calendars would show what he was supposed to be discussing with you. If the calendar says, call with Mrs. Torres Ree, storm delays and social media response, but he's claiming that conversation was about hiding discrimination, then we can prove he's lying about the context. Ella's lawyer finished. Everyone turned to Linda. Can you access those calendars? Ella asked. Linda bit her lip. They're on the company server. I had access when I was his assistant, but he probably deleted everything after he was arrested. Or he thought he deleted everything, Richard said with a smile. But nothing is ever really deleted from a server. We just need a good IT person. Patricia spoke up. Jason Reeves, our head of IT. He's the best. And he's been here since before David was hired. He's loyal to Mrs. Torres. Get him here, Ella ordered. Now. I don't care if it's midnight. 20 minutes later, Jason arrived, looking confused and sleepy. He was a young man in his 20s with messy hair and thick glasses. Mrs. Torres? Patricia said it was urgent. Ella explained the situation quickly. Can you recover David Mitchell's calendars and email logs from 5 years ago? Jason's face lit up. This was clearly his kind of challenge. Absolutely. We back up everything. Even deleted Files get archived for 7 years for legal compliance. Give me an hour. He set up his laptop at the conference table and got to work, his fingers flying across the keyboard. While they waited, Ella's phone rang again. A known number. She was about to ignore it when Richard said, "Answer it. Could be important." Ella picked up. "Hello, Mrs. Torres? This is Marcus Henderson. We met at the press conference today." Ella remembered. The young man who'd been discriminated against 3 years ago. The one with her late husband's name. "Marcus, hello. Is everything all right? I've been thinking about what you said, about holding you accountable. And I just saw the news about those recordings David Mitchell is releasing." He paused. "Mrs. Torres, I don't believe them. I don't believe you knew." Ella felt her throat tighten. "Thank you, but I'm not finished. I've been talking to other passengers who were discriminated against. The ones who came to the press conference, plus others who've reached out to me. We're all in a group chat now, about 50 of us, and we want to help you." "Help me? How?" "We're all making videos, testimonials, explaining that we filed complaints and they never reached you, explaining that we tried to contact you directly, but were blocked by David Mitchell's office. We're posting them on social media tonight with the hashtag #WeBelieveElla. By tomorrow morning, there will be hundreds of videos from passengers you've never met, all backing you up." Ella sat down heavily. "Marcus, you don't have to do that. You don't owe me anything." "You're right, we don't owe you. But we believe in second chances. We believe people can change. And what you did today, taking real responsibility, making real commitments, that matters to us. So we're fighting for you." After Ella hung up, she told the others what Marcus had said. They all looked stunned. "The passengers are defending you," Richard said slowly. That's huge. If CNN airs David's recordings, but social media is flooded with passengers supporting you. It changes the narrative," Ella's lawyer finished. "It shows that real people who are actually hurt, believe you're genuine." Patricia pulled out her phone. "It's already starting. Look." She held up her screen, showing Twitter. The hashtag #WeBelieveElla was trending with thousands of posts. "I was discriminated against by Torres Aviation in 2023. I filed a complaint. It never reached Mrs. Torres. David Mitchell made sure of that. #WeBelieveElla. Mrs. Torres didn't know because David Mitchell built a wall around her, but she's tearing that wall down now. #WeBelieveElla. Actions speak louder than words. Mrs. Torres put $50 million of her own money into fixing this. That's not someone who doesn't care. #WeBelieveElla." Ella read the post with tears streaming down her face. These people she'd failed, were standing up for her. "Got it." Jason suddenly shouted. Everyone rushed over to his laptop. On the screen were David Mitchell's recovered calendars, going back 5 years. Jason had organized them by phone calls with Ella Torres. "Look at this one," he said, pointing. "March 15th, 2020. David's calendar says, call with ET, discuss weather delays, customer complaint about cancellations, social media strategy. That's the call where Mrs. Torres said, do what you need to do about press." He pulled up the audio file David was releasing. But David's edited version makes it sound like they were talking about discrimination complaints. See? He cut out all the parts where they discussed the storm and flight cancellations. Richard was already recording the screen with his phone. This is gold. This proves he's manipulating the recordings. They went through each of David's 6 recordings. Every single one had the same pattern. David had taken phone calls about legitimate business issues and edited them to sound like Ella was approving discrimination and embezzlement. "We've got him," Ella's lawyer said. "This proves fraud, manipulation of evidence. We can destroy his credibility. How do we get this information out before CNN airs his recordings?" Patricia asked. Richard smiled. "We don't wait for CNN. We go live ourselves. Right now, social media. Mrs. Torres, have you ever done a live video?" Ella shook her head. "No, but I'm willing to learn." 10 minutes later, they'd set up a camera and lights in Ella's office. Richard helped her create accounts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. She'd never been on social media before. They titled the live stream, "The Truth About the Torres Tapes, Live Now." At 1:30 a.m., Ella went live. Within minutes, thousands of people were watching, then tens of thousands. The number kept climbing. Ella took a deep breath and looked directly into the camera. "Good morning. Or I guess I should say good night, since it's the middle of the night. My name is Ella Torres, and I'm here to tell you the truth about the recordings David Mitchell is planning to release tomorrow." She held up a printout of David's calendar. This is David Mitchell's own calendar from March 15th, 2020. It shows that on that day, we had a phone call to discuss weather delays and how to handle customer complaints about canceled flights. She clicked to play the audio file. First, David's edited version, just 30 seconds of her saying, "Do what you need to do." Then she played Jason's recovered version, the full 5-minute conversation where she and David discussed rebooking passengers, issuing refunds, and crafting a public apology for the weather delays. The "do what you need to do" comment was clearly about handling the storm situation, not about hiding discrimination. David Mitchell took this conversation and 5 others like it and edited them to sound like I was approving illegal activities. He removed all context. He manipulated the truth, and he's doing it because he's desperate to avoid prison. The viewer count was climbing rapidly. 50,000. 70,000. Ella held up another document. "This is a list of all the times over 5 years that I try to have meetings with department heads, including HR. David Mitchell's office canceled or rescheduled every single one. He kept me isolated, not because I want to be isolated, but because he was hiding his crimes." She looked directly at the camera. "I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong person. I should have been more involved, more insistent on knowing what was happening in my own company. But I did not approve of discrimination. I did not approve of embezzlement. And I will not let David Mitchell destroy my reputation to save himself." The comment section was exploding with support. People were sharing the video, tagging news outlets, demanding they cover the side of the story. Tomorrow, CNN is going to air David's edited recordings. They have every right to do that. But I want everyone to know the full truth first. Those recordings are lies, manipulations, and the proof is right here. She held up the USB drive Linda had given her. This drive contains a full, unedited recordings of every conversation David Mitchell is planning to release. It also contains his calendar showing what we were really discussing. I'm making all of it available to anyone who wants to verify the truth, journalists, investigators, anyone. She paused, letting that sink in. I'm also asking CNN to delay their broadcast until they can review this evidence. If they choose to air manipulated recordings without showing the full context, that's their choice. But they'll be spreading lies, and I'll hold them accountable. 100,000 viewers now. The live stream was being shared everywhere. Finally, I want to say something to the passengers of Torres Aviation, to those who were discriminated against. I see you, I hear you, I believe you, and I'm going to fix this, no matter what it costs me personally. She took a breath. To those who are supporting me with #WeBelieveElla, thank you. Your faith in me means more than you know. I won't let you down. And to David Mitchell, her voice hardened, you try to build a wall around me to hide your crimes. That wall is gone. You try to destroy my reputation, to save yourself. That's not going to work. And you're going to face justice for what you've done. She ended the live stream. The room erupted in cheers. Patricia hugged her. Jason pumped his fist. Even Ella's normally composed lawyer was grinning ear to ear. "Mrs. Torres, that was brilliant," Richard said. "Your live stream is already being picked up by news outlets. CNN is going to have to respond." Sure enough, within 30 minutes, Ella's phone rang. It was a producer from CNN. "Mrs. Torres, we've seen your live stream and reviewed the evidence you presented. We're pulling the David Mitchell recordings from tomorrow's broadcast. We'd like to interview you instead. A full hour, prime time, tomorrow night. Will you do it?" Ella smiled. "Yes, I'll do it." After she hung up, everyone in the room was celebrating. They'd won. They'd beaten David's last desperate attack. But Ella felt exhausted. She looked at the clock. 3 a.m. She'd been awake for almost 24 hours. "Everyone go home," she said. "Get some sleep. We still have a lot of work ahead of us." As people filed out, Richard approached her. "Ella, what you did tonight, that took courage. Real courage. I didn't have a choice. I wasn't going to let that man destroy me. No, it's more than that. You could have handled this quietly, settled with David, made the whole thing go away. Instead, you chose transparency. Truth, even when it was risky." Ella shrugged. "It's the only way to really fix things. If I'd hidden this, if I'd swept it under the rug, nothing would actually change. The same problems would keep happening." Richard smiled. "You're going to change the entire airline industry. You know that, right? Other airlines are watching. When they see you implementing body cameras, independent oversight, real consequences for discrimination, they're going to have to follow suit or risk losing customers to you." "Good," Ella said. "That's exactly what should happen." After Richard left, Ella sat alone in her office. She looked at Marcus's photo on the wall. "We did it," she whispered. "Or at least we survived another day." Her phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Mom, I just watched your live stream. You were amazing. The kids woke up from all my shouting. They want to know why Grandma is famous." Faced with tears of joy, Ella smiled. She texted back. "Tell them Grandma learned to use social media. Marcus would be so proud." Smiling face with smiling eyes. Wait, she just used an emoji. Her first emoji ever. She laughed. "Apparently being awake for 24 hours made you do strange things." She was about to pack up and finally go home when Patricia knocked on the door. "I'm sorry to bother you again, but there's someone here to see you. She says it's important." At 3 in the morning? She drove all the way from Cleveland. She says her name is Angela Price, and she used to work in David Mitchell's office. Ella's tiredness vanished. "Send her in." A woman in her 60s entered. She had gray hair and kind eyes, but she looked nervous, wringing her hands. "Mrs. Torres, thank you for seeing me. I know it's late. Please sit down. How can I help you?" Angela sat on the edge of the chair. "I worked as David Mitchell's secretary before Linda Foster. I retired 2 years ago, but I've been watching the news, and I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you a long time ago." Ella leaned forward. "Go on." 5 years ago, David asked me to do something. He wanted me to screen all your calls and emails. Any complaints or problems. I was supposed to reroute them away from you. He told me you'd requested this, that you wanted to focus on strategy and not be bothered with operational issues. Angela's eyes filled with tears. I believed him. I thought I was helping you. But now I realize he was isolating you, using me to build that wall. And I helped him do it. Angela, please let me finish. I need to say this. Angela pulled a tissue from her purse and dabbed her eyes. After I retired, Linda took over, but I trained her. I taught her David's system for protecting you from problems. I passed on his lies to her. And when I saw what happened at that airport, when I saw you being treated that way, she broke down crying. I realized that some of those complaints I rerouted might have stopped it if I'd let them reach you, if I'd questioned David's instructions. Ella came around the desk and knelt beside Angela's chair. She took the older woman's hands. Angela, you didn't know. He manipulated you, just like he manipulated everyone. But I should have known. I should have questioned it. Mrs. Torres, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Ella squeezed her hands. I forgive you. Do you hear me? I forgive you. You were trying to do your job. You thought you were following my wishes. That's not your fault. Angela looked up with red, puffy eyes. Really? And Angela, I could use someone like you. Someone who knows how David's system worked. Someone who can help me make sure nothing like that ever happens again. You want to come back. Not as a secretary. As an advisor. Help me build a better system. One that encourages transparency instead of hiding problems. Angela smiled through her tears. I'd be honored. After Angela left, Ella finally packed up her things and drove home. The sun was starting to rise as she pulled into her driveway. The sky was painted in shades of pink and orange, beautiful and hopeful. She went inside, took a hot shower, and fell into bed. She slept for 4 hours, dreamless and deep. When she woke up, it was 11 a.m. She checked her phone and found hundreds of messages. News outlets requesting interviews. Business leaders offering support. And one text from the governor. "You've made Ohio proud. Let's talk about those business discrimination reforms." But the message that made her smile most was from Harper James. "I saw your live stream. Thank you for fighting for what's right. I'm starting therapy to unpack my prejudices. It's hard, but necessary. Maybe someday I can help others unlearn their racism, too." Ella texted back, "That takes courage. I'm proud of you for doing the work." She got dressed and drove to the office. "Mrs. Torres, I just want you to know we're all behind you. What you're doing is amazing. My daughter is black, and what you said about making the airline safe for everyone, thank you. I've worked here for 15 years, and I've never been prouder to be part of this company." Ella felt warmth spreading through her chest. These were her people, her team, and they were ready to rebuild with her. The CNN interview that evening was watched by 12 million people. The interviewer tried to be tough, asking hard questions about how she'd missed the discrimination and embezzlement. But Ella answered honestly, admitting her failures while also presenting the evidence of David's manipulation. By the end of the hour, even the interviewer seemed convinced. "Mrs. Torres, one final question. If you could go back to that moment at the airport gate, before any of this happened, would you change anything?" Ella thought carefully. "No. As much as that moment hurt, it opened my eyes. It forced me to see problems I'd been blind to, and it gave me the chance to fix them. Sometimes we need to experience pain to find the courage to change." The interview ended with another standing ovation, this time from the studio audience. Over the next week, things began to shift. The stock price stabilized and then started climbing. Major clients who'd canceled their contracts came back, apologizing for their hasty decisions. 3 other airlines announced they were implementing similar reforms to Torres Aviation's new policies. David Mitchell's trial was set for 6 months away. His lawyer tried to get the charges dismissed, but the evidence was too strong. The forged signatures, the embezzlement, the manipulation of recordings. He was going to prison, and everyone knew it. Harper James started working with a nonprofit that trained corporate employees on recognizing and preventing discrimination. She was honest about her own failures, using her story as a cautionary tale. Some people would never forgive her, and she accepted that. But she was trying to be better. Marcus Henderson and the other passengers who'd been discriminated against became unofficial ambassadors for the new Torres Aviation. They spoke at the employee training sessions, sharing their experiences and helping staff understand the real impact of their actions. And Ella? She showed up to the office every single day. She walked the terminals, talked to passengers, met with employees at every level. She was visible, present, engaged. 1 month after the incident at the gate, Ella held a ceremony at Cleveland Hopkins International Airport. All the passengers who'd been discriminated against were invited. The media was there. Employees lined the terminal. Ella stood at a podium set up at Gate 12, the same gate where Harper had denied her boarding. 30 days ago, I stood at this gate feeling small and powerless, she began. I felt the pain that too many people of color feel every day, the pain of being judged by our appearance instead of our character. She looked out at the crowd. But something amazing happened after that painful moment. People came together. Passengers shared their stories. Employees committed to change. And we began the hard work of transforming this airline into what it should have always been, a place where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. She gestured to the passengers standing beside her. These brave individuals could have walked away. They could have written off Torres Aviation and never looked back. Instead, they gave us a second chance. They held us accountable, and they helped us become better. Ella pulled out an envelope. Marcus Henderson, would you please come up here? Marcus walked to the podium, looking surprised. Marcus, You were one of the first people to trust that I was serious about change. You helped organize the hashtag We Believe Ella movement. You spoke at our training sessions. You gave us the gift of your honesty, even when that honesty was painful to hear. She handed him the envelope. This is a lifetime platinum membership with Torres Aviation. You and your family will fly first class, free of charge, for the rest of your lives. It's a small token of my gratitude for your courage and grace. Marcus opened the envelope, his eyes wide. Mrs. Torres, I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep holding us accountable. Say you'll tell us when we mess up, because we're going to mess up sometimes. We're human, but with people like you keeping us honest, we'll keep getting better. Marcus hugged her, and the crowd erupted in applause. Ella presented similar gifts to each of the passengers who'd been discriminated against. By the end, she was crying. They were crying, and half the terminal was crying too. After the ceremony, as people were leaving, an elderly white woman approached Ella. She was probably in her 80s, walking with a cane. Mrs. Torres, I'm Dorothy Miller. I've been flying with your airline for 30 years. It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Miller. I wanted to tell you something. 30 years ago, when I first started flying with you, I saw some of the things that happened to passengers of color. I saw how they were treated differently, and I stayed silent. I told myself it wasn't my problem. I was ashamed of that silence. Dorothy's voice trembled. But what you've done, taking responsibility, making real changes, it inspired me. I've started speaking up now. When I see discrimination anywhere, I say something. I'm an old woman, but it's never too late to find your courage. Ella embraced her. Thank you for telling me that. And you're right, it's never too late. As Dorothy walked away, Ella felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Real, genuine hope that things could get better. That evening, Ella drove to the cemetery where Marcus was buried. She sat by his grave as the sun set, filling him in on everything that had happened. We did it, baby, she said softly. We saved the airline. More than that, we transformed it. You always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. She placed a hand on his headstone. I miss you every day, but I think you'd be proud of what I've done, what we've done together. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the oak tree above his grave, and Ella smiled. She liked to think that was Marcus, letting her know he was proud. She drove home as darkness fell. Sarah and the grandkids were waiting for her. They planned a family dinner to celebrate everything. As Ella walked through the door, 5-year-old Marcus ran up and hugged her legs. Grandma, we saw you on TV. You're a superhero. Ella laughed and picked him up. I'm not a superhero, baby. I'm just a grandmother who learned to stand up for what's right. That's what superheroes do, he insisted. Maybe he was right. Maybe heroes weren't people with special powers. Maybe they were just ordinary people who refused to stay silent when they saw injustice. People who made mistakes but then did the hard work of making things right. That night, after dinner, after the kids were in bed, Ella sat with Sarah on the back porch, both of them holding cups of tea. Mom, I have to ask, was it worth it? Everything you went through? Ella thought about that. The humiliation at the gate, the betrayal by David, the sleepless nights, the financial losses, the attacks on her character. Yes, she said finally, it was worth it, because real change is never easy. If fixing broken systems was comfortable and convenient, everyone would do it. But it's not comfortable. It's painful and messy and expensive. Mrs. Torres, I just want you to know we're all behind you. What you're doing is amazing. My daughter is black, and what you said about making the airline safe for everyone, thank you. I've worked here for 15 years, and I've never been prouder to be part of this company. Ella felt warmth spreading through her chest. These were her people, her team, and they were ready to rebuild with her. The CNN interview that evening was watched by 12 million people. The interviewer tried to be tough, asking hard questions about how she'd missed the discrimination and embezzlement. But Ella answered honestly, admitting her failures while also presenting the evidence of David's manipulation. By the end of the hour, even the interviewer seemed convinced. Mrs. Torres, one final question. If you could go back to that moment at the airport gate, before any of this happened, would you change anything? Ella thought carefully. No. As much as that moment hurt, it opened my eyes. It forced me to see problems I'd been blind to, and it gave me the chance to fix them. Sometimes we need to experience pain to find the courage to change. The interview ended with another standing ovation, this time from the studio audience. Over the next week, things began to shift. The stock price stabilized and then started climbing. Major clients who canceled their contracts came back, apologizing for their hasty decisions. 3 other airlines announced they were implementing similar reforms to Torres Aviation's new policies. David Mitchell's trial was set for 6 months away. His lawyer tried to get the charges dismissed, but the evidence was too strong. The forged signatures, the embezzlement, the manipulation of recordings. He was going to prison, and everyone knew it. Harper James started working with a nonprofit that trained corporate employees on recognizing and preventing discrimination. She was honest about her own failures, using her story as a cautionary tale. Some people would never forgive her, and she accepted that. But she was trying to be better. Marcus Henderson and the other passengers who'd been discriminated against became unofficial ambassadors for the new Torres Aviation. They spoke at the employee training sessions, sharing their experiences and helping staff understand the real impact of their actions. And Ella? She showed up to the office every single day. She walked the terminals, talked to passengers, met with employees at every level. She was visible, present, engaged. 1 month after the incident at the gate, Ella held a ceremony at Cleveland Hopkins International Airport. All the passengers who'd been discriminated against were invited. The media was there. Employees lined the terminal. Ella stood at a podium set up at Gate 12, the same gate where Harper had denied her boarding. 30 days ago, I stood at this gate feeling small and powerless, she began. I felt the pain that too many people of color feel every day, the pain of being judged by our appearance instead of our character. She looked out at the crowd. But something amazing happened after that painful moment. People came together. Passengers shared their stories. Employees committed to change. And we began the hard work of transforming this airline into what it should have always been, a place where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. She gestured to the passengers standing beside her. These brave individuals could have walked away. They could have written off Torres Aviation and never looked back. Instead, they gave us a second chance. They held us accountable, and they helped us become better. Ella pulled out an envelope. Marcus Henderson, would you please come up here? Marcus walked to the podium, looking surprised. Marcus, you were one of the first people to trust that I was serious about change. You helped organize the hashtag #WeBelieveElla movement. You spoke at our training sessions. You gave us the gift of your honesty, even when that honesty was painful to hear. She handed him the envelope. This is a lifetime platinum membership with Torres Aviation. You and your family will fly first class, free of charge, for the rest of your lives. It's a small token of my gratitude for your courage and grace. Marcus opened the envelope, his eyes wide. Mrs. Torres, I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep holding us accountable. Say you'll tell us when we mess up, because we're going to mess up sometimes. We're human, but with people like you keeping us honest, we'll keep getting better. Marcus hugged her, and the crowd erupted in applause. Ella presented similar gifts to each of the passengers who'd been discriminated against. By the end, she was crying. They were crying, and half the terminal was crying too. After the ceremony, as people were leaving, an elderly white woman approached Ella. She was probably in her 80s, walking with a cane. Mrs. Torres, I'm Dorothy Miller. I've been flying with your airline for 30 years. It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Miller. I wanted to tell you something. 30 years ago, when I first started flying with you, I saw some of the things that happened to passengers of color. I saw how they were treated differently, and I stayed silent. I told myself it wasn't my problem. I was ashamed of that silence. Dorothy's voice trembled. But what you've done, taking responsibility, making real changes, it inspired me. I've started speaking up now. When I see discrimination anywhere, I say something. I'm an old woman, but it's never too late to find your courage. Ella embraced her. Thank you for telling me that. And you're right, it's never too late. As Dorothy walked away, Ella felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Real, genuine hope that things could get better. That evening, Ella drove to the cemetery where Marcus was buried. She sat by his grave as the sun set, filling him in on everything that had happened. "We did it, baby," she said softly. "We saved the airline. More than that, we transformed it. You always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." She placed a hand on his headstone. "I miss you every day, but I think you'd be proud of what I've done, what we've done together." A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the oak tree above his grave, and Ella smiled. She liked to think that was Marcus, letting her know he was proud. She drove home as darkness fell. Sarah and the grandkids were waiting for her. They planned a family dinner to celebrate everything. As Ella walked through the door, 5-year-old Marcus ran up and hugged her legs. "Grandma, we saw you on TV. You're a superhero." Ella laughed and picked him up. "I'm not a superhero, baby. I'm just a grandmother who learned to stand up for what's right." "That's what superheroes do," he insisted. Maybe he was right. Maybe heroes weren't people with special powers. Maybe they were just ordinary people who refused to stay silent when they saw injustice. People who made mistakes but then did the hard work of making things right. That night, after dinner, after the kids were in bed, Ella sat with Sarah on the back porch, both of them holding cups of tea. "Mom, I have to ask, was it worth it? Everything you went through?" Ella thought about that. The humiliation at the gate, the betrayal by David, the sleepless nights, the financial losses, the attacks on her character. "Yes," she said finally, "it was worth it, because real change is never easy. If fixing broken systems was comfortable and convenient, everyone would do it. But it's not comfortable. It's painful and messy and expensive. And it's worth every bit of that pain if it means the next person doesn't have to go through what I went through." Sarah smiled. "Dad would say you're being too modest." "Your father would say I'm being stubborn," Ella corrected with a laugh. "But he loved that about me." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the crickets and watching the stars come out. Finally, Sarah spoke. "So what's next? What's the next big challenge to the great Ella Torres?" Ella smiled. "Next, I'm going to that governor's summit and sharing everything we learned. Then I'm going to work with other business leaders to help them create similar changes in their companies. And I'm going to keep showing up every day at Torres Aviation, making sure we live up to the promises we made." "Sound like you're going to be busy." "Good. I've spent too many years stepping back, trusting others to carry my vision. Not anymore. I'm all in now." As they went inside, Ella paused at the door and looked back at the night sky. Somewhere up there, Marcus was watching, and she hoped, no, she knew, he was proud, because she'd taken the worst moment of her life and turned it into a catalyst for change. She'd faced humiliation and betrayal and come out stronger. She'd learned that owning a company meant more than signing checks and attending quarterly meetings. It meant showing up, speaking up, and standing up for what was right. And she was just getting started. 3 months later, Torres Aviation won the Corporate Responsibility Award from the NAACP. Ella accepted the award with Marcus Henderson by her side. In her acceptance speech, she said, "This award doesn't belong to me alone. It belongs to every passenger who shared their painful story, every employee who committed to change, every person who believed that a 72-year-old woman who got denied boarding on her own airline could turn that moment into a movement." 6 months later, Harper James published a book called Unlearning Hate, My Journey from Racist Flight Attendant to Anti-Discrimination Advocate. Part of the proceeds went to organizations fighting racism. In the foreword, which Harper had asked Ella to write, Ella wrote, "This book is proof that people can change. Not easily, not quickly, but genuinely. Harper James hurt me and many others, but she's doing the hard work of becoming better. That's all any of us can do. Acknowledge our failures, learn from them, and commit to being better tomorrow than we were yesterday." 1 year later, David Mitchell was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for embezzlement, fraud, and obstruction of justice. At his sentencing, the judge said, "You betrayed the trust of your employer, your employees, and the passengers you were supposed to serve. You build a system designed to hide discrimination and line your own pockets. Justice demands accountability. Ella attended the sentencing. When it was over, she felt no joy in David's downfall, just relief that the truth had prevailed. And 5 years later, on the anniversary of that day at Gate 12, Ella stood in that same spot with a crowd of thousands. They'd come to celebrate 5 years of transformation at Torres Aviation. The airline now had the highest customer satisfaction ratings in the industry and the most diverse workforce. Other airlines had followed their lead, implementing similar reforms. But more importantly, thousands of passengers, people of all races, religions, and backgrounds, could now board planes without fear of discrimination. They could travel with dignity. They could be treated as human beings, not as problems to be managed. Ella was now 77 years old. Her hair was completely white. She moved a little slower, but her spirit burned as brightly as ever. As she stood at that gate, she thought about the scared, humiliated woman who'd stood there 5 years ago. That woman had felt powerless, broken, small, but she'd been wrong about being powerless. She had power all along, the power to speak truth, to demand change, to refuse to accept injustice. And, in the end, that was the real story. Not that an elderly black woman owned an airline, but that she used her power, her privilege, her wealth, her voice to make things right. That was the legacy Ella Torres wanted to leave behind. Not just a successful airline, but proof that it's never too late to stand up for what's right. That one person, speaking truth, can start a wave of change. That humiliation can become transformation if you're brave enough to face it head on. As the ceremony ended and the crowd dispersed, a young black girl, maybe 9 years old, approached Ella shyly. "Mrs. Torres, my teacher told us your story. She said you're a hero." Ella knelt down to the girl's level. "I'm not a hero, sweetheart. I'm just someone who decided to do the right thing." "But that's what heroes do," the girl said seriously. "They do the right thing even when it's hard." Ella smiled, remembering her grandson saying almost the same thing 5 years ago. "Maybe you're right," Ella said. "And you know what? You can be a hero too. Anytime you see something wrong, speak up. Use your voice. Don't stay silent. Can you do that?" The girl nodded enthusiastically. "I promise." As the girl ran back to her parents, Ella stood up slowly. Her back ached. It always did these days. But her heart was full. She looked up at the departure board, watching flights take off to cities all across America and the world. Each plane carried passengers who would be treated with respect and dignity, regardless of who they were or what they looked like. That was worth everything she'd been through. That was worth the pain, the struggle, the sleepless nights. That was the true reward. Ella Torres, the elderly black woman who'd been denied first class on her own airline, had turned her moment of greatest humiliation into her greatest triumph. And she wasn't done yet, not by a long shot.